All right, let's dive right into one of the most fundamental molecules in all of biochemistry, monosaccharides. We're going to explore the elegant and honestly surprisingly complex world of these simple sugars. They're the essential blueprint for all carbohydrates. So, let's kick things off with a puzzle. You've got glucose and you've got fructose. Both of them share the exact same chemical formula, C6H12O6. 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, 6 oxygens. And yet, our bodies handle them in completely different ways. How on earth is that possible? Well, the secret isn't in what they're made of, but how they're actually built. The answer is hiding in plain sight, right in their three-dimensional structural blueprint. It's the specific arrangement of those atoms in space that gives each sugar its totally unique identity and function. To solve this, we've got to lay down some groundwork first. What exactly makes a molecule a carbohydrate? And how do we even begin to tell these different sugars apart? Okay, so the official biochemical definition sounds a little intimidating. Polyhydroxyaldehydes or ketones. But let's just break that down. Polyhydroxy is simple. It just means they have multiple hydroxyl or minus OH groups. The real key, the part that starts to tell them apart, is the second bit, whether it's an aldehyde or a ketone. And that's our first big clue. And this brings us to the first major fork in the road. Sugars get sorted based on their main functional group. If it has an aldehyde group, we call it an aldose, and that's our friend glucose. If it's got a ketone group, it's a ketose, like fructose. Just that one structural difference is the very first piece of our C6H12O6 puzzle. And on top of that, we also classify them by how many carbon atoms they have in their backbone. A 3-carbon sugar is a triose, a 5-carbon one is a pentose, think ribose and RNA, and a 6-carbon one is a hexose. So if we want to be really precise, glucose is an aldohexose, while fructose is a ketohexose. See, same formula, but already we have different structures and different names. But the functional group is only part of the story. The next layer of complexity, and really the source of their incredible diversity, comes from how these atoms are arranged in three-dimensional space. This brings us to a really cool concept called stereoisomers. These are molecules that have the same exact atoms connected in the same exact order, but they're just arranged differently in 3D. The best analogy? Your hands. They have the same parts, right? But they're mirror images, and you can't lay one perfectly on top of the other. Now, the most fundamental split here is between the D form and L forms. And this is decided by looking at the hydroxyl group on the chiral carbon that's farthest from the main carbonyl group. If that OH group is pointing to the right, it's a D sugar. If it's on the left, it's an L sugar. And this is clinically vital. Pretty much all the sugars in our bodies are D forms. Our enzymes are super specific, built to recognize them and ignore their L-form twins. We can get even more specific with this. Check out epimers. These are stereoisomers that differ at only one single carbon. Take glucose and galactose, they are almost identical, but if you look at carbon number 4, the hydroxyl group is pointing in a different direction. That tiny change makes them C4 epimers, and it's enough to give them totally distinct roles in our bodies. And finally, we have enantiomers. These are those perfect, non-superimposable mirror images we just talked about, like D-glucose and L-glucose. They might look the same on paper, but in our bodies, they are worlds apart. Our entire biology is built for one and not the other. So far, we've been picturing sugars as these straight, linear chains. But in reality, especially in the watery environment of our cells, that's not their favorite shape. They actually do this amazing bit of chemical yoga and fold themselves up into stable rings. Let's quickly walk through how this happens. In its linear form, the glucose chain is pretty flexible. The hydroxyl group, way down on carbon 5, can actually swing around and attack the aldehyde group at carbon 1. This reaction closes the chain and forms a stable ring structure we call a hemiacetal. And this isn't just a small tweak, it fundamentally changes the sugar's properties. And this ring formation, it reveals another huge difference between our two mystery molecules. Glucose usually forms a super stable 6-membered ring, which we call a pyranose ring. Fructose, on the other hand, prefers a 5-membered ring, known as a furanose ring. And there it is, another piece of our puzzle just fell right into place. Okay, so this whole act of forming a ring has a massively important consequence. It creates a new, special carbon atom that has all these unique properties we absolutely need to understand. So when that ring snaps shut, the carbon that used to be the aldehyde or ketone, that's C1 in glucose, suddenly becomes a new chiral center. It's now bonded to 4 different groups. We give this very important carbon a special name, the anomeric carbon. This spot is now the center of some really important chemistry. Now, because this anomeric carbon is new, the hydroxyl group attached to it can point in one of 2 directions. If it points down, we call it the alpha anomer. If it points up, it's the beta anomer. This seems like a tiny detail, but it's everything. It determines how these sugars link together to form huge carbohydrates like starch and cellulose. So you might be asking yourself, okay, why are we focusing so much on this one hydroxyl group on one carbon? Up, down, who cares? Why does it matter so much? Well, it matters a ton. Because a free anomeric carbon gives a sugar a special power. It can act as a reducing agent. This happens because the ring can temporarily pop open again, exposing that reactive aldehyde group, which can then go and donate electrons. This chemical trick is the basis for classic clinical tests like Benedict's test, which is used to detect sugars in urine, a super important diagnostic tool. So most simple sugars like glucose and fructose are, in fact, reducing sugars. But a really key exception is sucrose, table sugar. Sucrose is non-reducing. Why? Because the anomeric carbons of its 2 parts are locked together in a bond. Neither ring can open up, so it completely loses that reducing ability. Okay, let's bring it all home. We've gone through chains, rings, isomers, the whole shebang. Now we can finally and definitively answer our initial question and solve the sweet mystery of glucose and fructose. So how can C6H12O6 be 2 completely different things? Because their blueprints are fundamentally different. Glucose is an aldose that forms a pyranose ring. Fructose is a ketose that forms a furanose ring. They're what we call structural isomers. Every single feature we've talked about, from the functional group to the ring structure, is what makes them unique. And hey, to help you remember these key structural features, here's a simple mnemonic. A, K, E, A, R. Is it an aldose or ketose? What are its epimers? Is it an alpha or beta anomer? And what kind of ring does it form? Ask those questions, and you can define any monosaccharide you come across. We've seen that even the simplest sugar is this marvel of structural complexity, where every single bond and every angle truly matters. And that just leaves us with one final fascinating thought. If a single sugar is this complex, what happens when we start linking them together into the giant chains that make up starch, glycogen, and cellulose? Well, that's a story for another time.